You know that moment when you open your phone hoping their name shows up and it doesn't? When you keep rereading the last message just to convince yourself it wasn't that cold? They didn't forget you. They just didn't care enough. And I know how that line sounds. Harsh, heavy. But sometimes the truth has no soft edges. There was someone I waited for too. I told myself they were busy, that they'd come around, that maybe they didn't know how much I needed them to just check in. But the silence kept growing louder, and eventually I started to shrink myself just to fill it. I posted stories I hoped they'd see. I laughed louder in rooms they might walk into. I became the echo of someone who still believed they mattered to a person who had quietly moved on. The worst part? I was still holding on to the good version of them in my head. The one who cared, the one who used to ask how my day was. But I was grieving someone who was still alive. That's a special kind of ache. You don't get closure from people who never really said goodbye. You just get used to the space they leave behind. And maybe that's what hurts the most, not that they left, but that when they did, it didn't cost them anything. They just kept living, kept smiling, kept showing up for everyone else. While you were breaking quietly, telling yourself not to reach out again, deleting the paragraph you wrote, pretending you're fine. But the truth is, your worth was never supposed to be proven through silence. And someone who really cared, they wouldn't have made you guess. I used to think love was measured by how long someone stayed. But now I know it's about who shows up when it's inconvenient. Because anyone can care when it's easy, when you're happy, glowing, posting selfies. But when you're low, when your voice trembles and your eyes don't sparkle anymore, that's when you find out who really sees you. And they didn't. Not really. They saw the version of you that was useful. Fun.supportive. They loved the parts that made them feel better. But when you got quiet, when your messages got longer and your replies got slower, that's when they disappeared. And maybe you've been blaming yourself ever since. That maybe if you were more exciting, they would have stayed. Maybe if you didn't overthink, didn't check in too much, didn't show how much you cared, they would have loved you back. But that's not love. That's emotional convenience. And you are not made to be someone's backup plan just because they're bored or lonely or between better options. I remember crying into a pillow one night, whispering out loud, "Why wasn't I enough?" Like maybe if I asked gently enough, the pain would answer back. But all I got was silence, the kind that doesn't echo. And somewhere in that quiet, I realized maybe I was enough, just not for them. And maybe that's okay, because not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay. Some people are only here to teach you what love shouldn't feel like. There was a day I stared at my phone for hours, waiting. You know that feeling, right? You leave your ringer on even though it never rings. You check your notifications even though there's nothing new. You open the chat, reread the last thing you sent, and wonder if maybe it was too much or too little. I kept hoping for a message, something small. A "how are you?" A "sorry I've been distant." Anything that felt like I still mattered. But nothing came. And the worst part? A part of me still believed it was my fault. That maybe I was too clingy, too emotional. Maybe I said the wrong thing and scared them off. That maybe, if I had just stayed a little quieter, smiled a little more, needed a little less, they would have stayed. So I turned inward, started editing myself. I wouldn't text first, wouldn't share how I was feeling, wouldn't let myself be seen too deeply, because I thought that if I became easier to love, they'd come back. But silence doesn't mean safety, and shrinking yourself doesn't make someone stay. It only makes you forget who you are. I kept thinking love was something I had to earn, that being chosen meant being perfect. But now I know, if someone makes you feel like being yourself is a burden, that isn't love. That's survival. And you deserve more than surviving in someone's shadow. They didn't forget you. They remembered, and still chose not to show up. That's the truth that hurts the most. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't come with screaming or slamming doors. It's quiet. It builds slowly. One unread message at a time, one late reply, one, sorry, I forgot, that never really felt like an accident. And slowly they just stop showing up. Not in a loud way, just less. Until one day you're standing there alone, wondering when it stopped feeling mutual, when it stopped feeling like love. I remember walking past a place we used to go together. A small bench near the park fountain, same breeze, same trees, but everything felt hollow. Because what mattered wasn't the place. It was how safe I used to feel there, with them, with their eyes on me, their voice knowing when to ask, are you okay? That version of them doesn't exist anymore. And maybe they never really did. Maybe I just wanted them to be that person so badly, I ignored all the quiet ways they were already leaving. You tell yourself stories to protect your heart. You say, they must be going through something. Or, they're just not good at texting. But deep down, you know when someone wants to talk to you, they do. They make space. They remember you. They check in without being asked. And they don't leave you wondering whether you even matter anymore. You gave so much of your heart to someone who didn't even hold it with both hands. And I'm sorry for that. You shouldn't have had to beg to be seen. You shouldn't have had to chase love like it was hiding from you. You are not invisible. You are not forgettable. And one day, someone will remember you. Not because you reached out again, but because they never wanted to lose you in the first place. I used to think closure came from them, that if they just explained why they left, maybe I could finally sleep through the night without waking up feeling hollow. I told myself I just needed one message, one final conversation, something that said, you mattered, even if I'm gone. But that message never came. And slowly I realized it was never going to. Some people don't leave with answers. They leave with silence. They leave when you're not looking, when you're still holding space for them in your day. They move on like nothing happened, like you were just a pause in their story, and you're stuck holding all the chapters they never came back to finish. So I had to build the closure myself, in the quiet, in the 2 a.m. moments, when I cried so softly not even the walls could hear, in the mornings when getting out of bed felt like a betrayal to my own sadness. But I did it, not because I suddenly stopped hurting, but because I finally understood. Waiting for someone to make you whole is how you stay broken. There's a power in deciding you're done, not out of anger, but from softness, from the kind of peace that says, I gave my all, and it wasn't returned, but I still have love left for myself. That's the closure no one else can give you. If they didn't check in, if they didn't stay, if they forgot the version of you that loved them anyway, that's not your shame to carry. That's their story to regret later. You don't need to shrink your heart just to fit into someone else's absence. You're not here to be remembered as a maybe. You're here to be known, deeply, fully. Now, I used to wonder if they ever thought about me, late at night, while they waited in line somewhere, when a song we used to sing came on the radio. I used to believe that maybe, just maybe, a piece of me still lived in their mind the way they lived in mine. That maybe I'd become a soft ache in their chest too. Something unspoken but still real. It's strange how silence can feel so loud. When someone leaves without explanation, your brain writes all the missing lines. You turn into both the author and the reader of a story you never asked to finish alone. You create excuses on their behalf. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they were scared of how deeply they felt. Maybe their heart was tired. But all those maybes, they become a trap, a way to hold on to people who already let go. I held on for too long, to the hope that they'd remember me, that they'd come back different, more aware, more ready. But what I've learned is this: people who care don't disappear. They don't let weeks pass without checking in. They don't forget the way your voice changes when you're sad, or the way you laugh when you're nervous. They remember, and they act on it. They didn't forget you. They just didn't care enough to carry your heart with them. Not like you did. And that's the hardest kind of goodbye, the one that never got spoken, the one you had to feel instead. But you loved deeply. And there's nothing shameful about that. You were real, even if they weren't ready. And one day when you're loved the way you always deserved, none of this will feel like a loss. It'll feel like the painful beginning of something softer, something true. Sometimes I go back to the last thing they said, not because it was meaningful, but because it was the last thing, the final thread, the last evidence that at one point we mattered. It wasn't some poetic goodbye, it wasn't closure, it was something casual, almost forgettable. Take care. Two words that sounded gentle but didn't stay to see if I ever actually did. That's the kind of ending that doesn't feel like an ending at all. It just feels like absence. You don't realize how deeply someone existed inside you until they're gone. Until you wake up and feel the silence where their voice used to live. Until you catch yourself reaching for your phone without even knowing why. I tried to fill that space with logic. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be. Things fall apart for better things to come. But even the wisest phrases feel hollow when your heart is still bleeding. Not everything that breaks teaches you something. Some things just hurt. And that's valid too. People will try to speed up your grief. Friends will say, there are better people out there. And maybe they're right. But when someone's name still echoes inside your chest, that kind of comfort feels distant. Because no one else was them. No one else laughed like they did. No one else looked at you like they knew every version of your soul. And still walked away. I used to wonder if I was easy to forget, if loving me was forgettable. But the truth is, I loved deeply, fully, without holding back. That's not weakness, that's courage. And if they left without recognizing the depth of that gift, then it's not your loss to carry, it's theirs. You are still here, still trying, and that's more than enough. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's quiet, almost invisible. Sometimes it looks like waking up and realizing you didn't dream about them, or brushing your teeth without pausing to check your phone. Sometimes it's eating a full meal alone without thinking about how they used to order for you. It's tiny, but it's everything, and no one sees it except you. The first time I laughed after they left, I froze, mid-laugh, as if joy was some kind of betrayal. Like feeling okay meant I had forgotten them. But I hadn't. I was just remembering myself. That's the most difficult part, giving yourself permission to feel light again when your body still remembers what it feels like to carry them. I remember the first day I didn't think about them until late afternoon. That moment hit me harder than any breakdown, because it meant I was returning, slowly, gently, back to a version of myself I thought was gone. I didn't celebrate it out loud, but I smiled. And that smile wasn't for them. It was for me. A quiet whisper, you're getting there. But some days the missing returns. Not for the person they are now, but for who they were when they made you feel safe. You'll grieve the potential, the unspoken plans, the soft what-ifs. And that grief doesn't make you weak. It means you cared deeply, that your love had roots, even if theirs never grew. They didn't forget you. But forgetting you came easier than you imagined. And that truth is sharp. But healing? That's the soft answer. That's the part they'll never witness. The version of you that came back from their silence. Stronger, quieter, wiser, and still capable of love. One of the hardest parts was realizing they didn't even notice I was gone. Not in the way I noticed them. I had to pull myself out of every memory, every shared place, every soft detail, while they kept building a life that didn't have my name in it anymore. I kept wondering if they'd ever pause, even for a second, and feel the absence I lived in. But if they did, they never said, and I stopped asking. Because eventually, you learn not to reach for someone who made it so easy to let you go. I started rebuilding, not because I was ready, but because I couldn't keep breaking. I got tired of my own tears. I got tired of explaining to myself why their silence might be okay. So I did small things. I drank coffee alone. I deleted old drafts of messages I'd never send. I went to familiar places and let them feel unfamiliar again. That's how healing begins. Not through closure, but through reclaiming pieces of yourself they didn't bother to hold. Some nights, I still wonder if they think of me, if my name crosses their mind the way theirs still crosses mine. But even if it does, I've stopped needing to know, because healing isn't about them anymore. It's about me. It's about not letting the memory of someone who didn't stay stop me from living like I deserve to be remembered. They didn't forget you because you were forgettable. They forgot you because they didn't know how to value what they had. And that's not your burden to carry. That's theirs to live with, quietly, privately. While you move forward, still kind, still open, still becoming someone even better. The kind of person who would never leave someone wondering if they mattered. This is the part no one prepares you for, the day you stop looking back. Not because it doesn't hurt anymore, but because the pain no longer needs your attention. It still lives somewhere inside you, like a scar you forgot the story behind. But it doesn't control your days anymore. And one afternoon, without even realizing it, you'll get through the whole day without their name showing up in your mind. That's when you'll know you didn't just survive them. You outgrew the version of you that kept waiting. You'll walk past the old places without needing to slow down. You'll hear that one song and won't feel your stomach drop. You'll see a stranger who reminds you of them, and instead of flinching, you'll blink and keep walking. That's what real healing feels like. Not dramatic, not loud, just stillness. A kind of peace that comes from finally remembering who you are without their shadow on your skin. You're not the person who begged for crumbs anymore. You're not the one who wrote long messages and deleted them before sending. You're not the one who stayed quiet just to avoid losing someone who had already let go. You've become someone softer, but not fragile. Someone who bends with life's winds, but no longer breaks trying to hold what doesn't hold you back. And if they ever return, curious, nostalgic, unsure, let them see you whole. Let them feel the distance. Let them know without saying a word that the version of you who waited no longer lives here. You don't have to hate them to move on. You just have to love yourself more than the memory of being almost loved. They didn't forget you. They just didn't care enough. But now, finally, you do. And that's how you begin again.